I think what our trainers and the people that attend our workshops in the Six Missional Practices, I think what they want to know is, yeah, how do we know these work?
Yeah, well, I would if I were they.
I mean, where'd these even come from? And
It's a duh.
if I'm paying to sit here for a day or 3 Thursday nights in a row and work with a gifted person learning a thing, and I'm supposed to do it, well, what makes these the teachable things that are going to make a difference?
A kind of research, an odd sort of research, I think, from the point of view of how most people think of research.
Yeah.
Part of the genius of what you've been doing, Pat, for 20-some years, 28, has been gathering stories and helping people gather their own stories. And from those stories, we've looked at the behaviors that change and that make a difference in local churches. And to me, what it started to feel like was, you can thicken broth real quickly by throwing in cornstarch. But, right, I mean, who wants that?
Yeah.
Or you can take the time to condense it, to reduce it over a significant period of time. That's what we've done with these. We've taken these stories, we've said, okay, what's the core sauce here? What's the behavior? And sometimes I'd even say, what's the metaphor
Yeah.
that gathers this narrative? It's
Yeah.
kind of like the metaphor's the freeze-dried
Yeah.
narrative.
Yeah.
And that's what these practices are. We don't know, there are probably some other practices, no doubt, and we'll come up with more. And we may even perfect these a bit.
Yeah.
But these 6, we know
Yeah.
on the basis of long periods of practice in multiple cultures, multiple languages, very different
Yes.
class.
Yeah.
I mean, it's astounding, the different settings. These stories and these practices have led to people being more missional. They've been, our one little line, innovating your church's capacities to be renewed in God's mission.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Does that mean that I've been trying to put this into words for a while. I think it might mean that they are just simply tuned in or paying attention to God more.
I think in the long run, the biggest challenge we face in modern society, by that, I mean the society that's developed over the last 400 years in the West and has passed itself to some other cultures, is this, fancy term is the buffered self, this notion that only the individual and only humans create meaning. And so we have this private bubble around us, and we can't actually experience the way in which the creation is filled with meaning. We think we're making it. And the worst of that is we don't experience God's making value, even of our own lives. There's this terrible loneliness, right? So all 6 of these practices are saying, do these, and you'll be surprised what God is up to.
It's almost like you're cleaning the windows of your private bubble so you can see out. I mean, and maybe you get rid of the bubble entirely.
Maybe the bubble at least gets thinner.
Yeah.
These are the places where the thinness
Yeah.
can show up for ordinary folk. They don't have to go to a special place on the face of the earth.
No.
I mean, there are thin places, I don't question that.
Yeah.
But these are practices that make the ordinary thin to the presence of God.
Okay, so like dwelling in the world, for example, when we're in our daily rounds of life, and we're paying attention, looking for people of peace that God may have put on our path, or that God may have put us on their path, or when we seek out persons of peace. Do you have any stories about congregations that have taken up that dwelling in the world as a practice where they actually do encounter?
It was kind of it's been very interesting to watch over the last 8-9 years now in Great Britain.
Yeah.
Because the patterns that we see in the United States and in Denmark and Germany, Norway and South Africa and Australia, are really intense on these issues among the majority of the people of Great Britain. They really find it frightening to imagine themselves doing anything as intimate as talking about their faith
Yeah, yeah.
with a stranger.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, for the average American, it's weird and we don't do it. And,
Yeah.
but for them, I mean, it's the
Wow.
level of threat
Yeah.
is huge. And yet, on the other hand, there's a number of stories. I want to tell one. It's about St. Mary's, Humberston.
Uh-huh.
So now St. Mary's is a church where there are people who are buried in the churchyard, back to the 13th and 12th century.
It's been
Yeah,
around
yeah,
longer than most American churches.
Yeah,
then,
it
right?
has,
Yeah,
yeah. Part of the actual church building is Norman,
yeah. Mm.
if you can
Whoa,
imagine.
1066 and following. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. But the churchyard is gorgeous, and these trees. I'm sure that some of them are 400 or 500 years old easily.
Yeah.
The problem is they're right in the middle of this village that's been swallowed up by Leicester and
Okay,
Nottingham.
Okay.
And frankly, you can walk through the village and never see the church because it has this beautiful garden around it, right? So you literally, I've walked around the
Accessible
entire
but
area.
invisible.
Yeah, that's right, accessible. They're right at the heart of the village and no one can see it.
Oh my God.
And this congregation was utterly convinced that, who are the people in your neighborhood? When we asked that question, they said, oh, well, it's probably all these people who once were Church of England and now they're kind of secular, uninterested
Yeah.
in the church. They're not against this, but on the whole,
Yeah.
it's not. So when we actually did the demographics, they discovered that actually well over 60% of the people within the community were very religious and very active in the religion. They just weren't Christian. They were people from various subcontinent of India,
Oh, yeah.
faiths,
Yeah.
Hindus, some people call that, lots of Muslims, etc.
Yeah.
So one of the women who was on the steering team, his name was Viv. Lively, lively. And she had been working on this dwelling in the world. And Viv, in all honesty, is not an extrovert. She's, even for an English woman, she's shy. Right? Nice, very friendly, but shy.
Yeah.
So she's out hanging up her clothes.
Yeah.
Something I always find absolutely bizarre that anyone in the Midlands, the East Midlands, ever thinks you're going to be able to dry your clothes on
By
the line.
hanging them outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, well, anyway.
But anyway.
Anyway, so she was, and the lady next door was doing the same thing.
Uh-huh.
And she had noticed that this woman was kind of a person of peace.
Mm.
And so she started chatting with her, and the woman invited her for tea.
Mm.
Now, that's a very English thing to do,
Mhm.
right? But the tea was something she had grown herself. Her name was Mina, I believe, who was Muslim.
Mm.
And she'd grown this mint tea herself.
Wow.
And on the basis of that conversation, St. Mary's came up with this idea of hosting a festival of faiths, festival of religions
Uh-huh.
for the community,
Oh.
in which all the different religions who wanted to could put up booths
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and share food,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, the food would be the best.
Yeah, it would, no doubt, and it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And this has become a big deal.
Wow. Oh, it's been continuing.
Oh, yeah, it's a yearly sort of thing.
Huh.
And to me, the most wondrous thing, to be honest, is it's freed these English men and women who happen to be Church of England, these Christians, to, as it were, come out of the closet as Christians.
Uh-huh.
Not now, because they've been able to celebrate and create a safer space for celebrating
Right,
this diversity of religions
Right,
among
right.
their neighbors.
right.
Because they've dwelt in their world, it's a lot easier for them to name themselves
Mm,
as followers of Jesus
mm,
in this complex world in which they live.
right.
So the dwelling in the world led to the announcing the kingdom,
Yeah.
which I never would have anticipated, frankly.
Mm,
Um, this stories have been put into a book, and I'm sure we can put
A link to the book.
a link to the book.
Sure.
I personally don't own the book, but I've seen it and held it and read it.
Okay.
But it's a very interesting story.
So even in American culture where we're shy to do this, we don't want to prevail on someone else and so on. We see this shy woman hanging out clothes and eventually having tea with another shy woman, who eventually their whole communities come together, at least yearly. But that breaks the ice for
Now, lots of other
who
things.
knows how many
Oh, yeah, lots of
conversations.
other things.
Yeah. Okay. Good story.
And I think the other thing I've been observing, Pat, we have these really nice ideas. So you know, the church body you and I are part of has put a massive emphasis through all our adult years on how we're going to welcome strangers.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't done that very well, right? And I don't want to pick on our church. I just, ours is like so many others. We just know it better.
Hmm.
And we tend to leave this in the abstract, this
Yeah.
concept of welcoming the stranger,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever these principles are, being diverse, being pluralistic, or whatever.
Yeah.
And when you help people to actually name these people of peace and the relationships they have as they actually are,
Yeah.
as it were, to embody the concept,
Yeah.
it changes their capacity to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, oddly enough, these practices are doing that. They're helping people to embody abstractions so that the ordinary folk can act on them.
And as you said earlier, they're built on relationships.
All of them.
So the relationships that are born, if you don't get anything else from doing a practice, you get maybe deeper, better relationships.
You do.
And then when that happens in a small group in a congregation, then that becomes writ large, because the congregation then enters into relationships with other people.
Yeah.
So we get from an I, that buffered self, individualistic,
Me, myself,
Bubble.
and I, the divine
the
Trinity.
Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
You get from only you singular or I singular, you get to a we or the you plural that's in all the New Testament writings, which is
Mhm.
what we're supposed to be thinking of ourselves as anyway.
It is. Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Thanks for the question.